The greatest of all time, the GOAT. Every player wants to be it, and I'm sure you yourself are no stranger to the conversation of who is the GOAT in football. But the question I know you're all thinking right now is who's the best player to play at every MLS club? Well, it looks like you clicked on the right video. I've got that for you. Atlanta United are a young club, their first season being in 2017, so not a huge pool to pick from, but for me, it's between two guys. Miguel Almiron and Josef Martinez, the perfect duo when they won MLS Cup. It's between these two. But one of these guys sets himself apart. He was insane in 2018 and 2019, a runaway MVP candidate in his 2018 season, Josef Martinez. 35 goals in 39 games in all competitions for Atlanta United in 2018. However, Almiron left in 2019, and Josef still put up great numbers. They still finished second in the East. They still won 2 playoff games. However, when Josef was gone in 2020 due to injury, Atlanta was horrible. They finished 12th in the East, scored less than a goal a game. It was just terrible. Both Almiron and Martinez were huge in that 2018 MLS Cup run, but Almiron went off and did big things in Europe, but Martinez stayed back and still performed at Atlanta. Austin FC haven't had long in Major League Soccer, but from what we've seen so far, it's Sebastian Driussi. Easily the most exciting and productive player that Austin FC have seen. Runner-up for MVP, so for a young club, he's the best. And Charlotte FC, another young team in Major League Soccer, have not had a lot of time to prove that they have a best player of all time, but from what we've seen so far from the Crown City, I'm going Karol Swiderski. 10 goals and 6 assists in his first season with the club. It's gotta be him. Now the Chicago Fire, a team with a lot more history than the last two, they've had some huge players come through. Stoichkov was a Ballon d'Or winner back in his day before he went to the Chicago Fire, and Bastian Schweinsteiger captained a World Cup winning squad, but couldn't bring a World Cup to the Chicago Fire.
We as a club don't play for the World Cup, but we'll adjust it to MLS Cup.
But this award that I'm giving out here has to go to the best player at their time at the club. So this goes to Ante Razov. He brought the Chicago Fire their first ever MLS Cup in the same year that they won the US Open Cup in 1998, and he is by far the leading goal scorer for the Fire. A back in the day baller, that's what we're gonna call him. Ante Razov, the best player in Chicago Fire history. Another young club, FC Cincinnati, and we're going with somewhat of a young player, and that's Brandon Vazquez. A club that has not had a lot of exciting players, but Brandon Vazquez in 2022 broke out and proved he deserved to be on this list. Started all but 3 games that season, 17 goals, 5 assists, and changed the way this team attacked. He gave them stability at the striker position, which in their time in Major League Soccer, they had never had. To the Colorado Rapids, another club where I wouldn't say any names completely stand out. Even though they've been in the league since its inception, no real stars come out of the Colorado Rapids. Connor Casey is a guy that comes to mind because of his consistency and what he did for this club, but the guy I'm going with is Pablo Mastroeni. Now a manager in Major League Soccer, but his playing days, he was a baller. And the reason I pick him over a player like Connor Casey or even Marcelo Balboa is because he was consistent for this club year after year. The most appearances in club history, and he captained them in their MLS Cup victory in 2010. And bringing an MLS Cup to your club, the only time that's ever happened, has to just shoot you up that list. Pablo Mastroeni gets the nod. Another historic team in Major League Soccer, the Columbus Crew, and this one goes to Chad Marshall. Some decent names and some real throwback names when you're looking at the Columbus Crew, but Chad Marshall is one of the most underlooked and one of the most underappreciated players when it comes to, all-time history and talking about the best players of Major League Soccer. I don't think a lot of you out there would have put him on your list, but he absolutely deserves the role. He was back-to-back MLS Defender of the Year in 08 and 09, and that 08 year, the Columbus Crew won their first MLS Cup. And they also won the Supporters' Shield that year. Truly one of the best defenders in Major League Soccer history, but a lot of people forget the name. I mean, to be fair, it's a pretty forgettable name, Chad Marshall. It's like as generic as it gets. Don't they say never trust a guy with 2 first names? Well, I trust Chad Marshall to be my guy, to be the best player in Columbus Crew history, most appearances for the club of all time, and didn't even play his whole career there. Another OG club, DC United, been in the league since '96, and Jaime Moreno knows all about success at DC United. The all-time leading scorer for the club by nearly 3 times the amount of goals. He's played the most matches for the club by far, and he won 4 MLS clubs in DC. He wrote the book on how to be an MLS striker in the early days of the league. I mean, come on. Look at this guy.
To the box, Moreno, and to the net!
FC Dallas, a club with not a lot of success in their past, no MLS Cups to their name, only been to the MLS Cup final once and they lost, but they do have a man who was a leader through a lot of their ups and downs and is a fantastic defender. That is Matt Hedges. So strong from the back and played the most matches for this club. A reliable defender at a club that really hasn't had a lot of success. The Houston Dynamo. So I sat down, started planning for this video, making sure I had all the research done, every best player, and the Houston Dynamo came up, and all my brain could think was Brian Ching. Some of the biggest goals in the biggest moments for this team, and a player that has always been etched in my brain. He gave the Dynamo an MLS Cup in '06. Taylor Twellman scored 22 minutes into extra time, and 71 seconds later, directly off the kickoff essentially, Ching scored the equalizer. He then went and scored the penalty that won them the shootout. I mean, Brian Ching is my pick. Sporting Kansas City, where Graham Zusi and Matt Besler are essentially both loved the most by the home fans. They represented the national team in the 2014 World Cup. They both came into the league at the same time. I mean, come on, they're the greatest, right? Well, I'm not going with either one of them. Take me back to the days of the Wizards and give me Preki. And you may be questioning my decision here, and that's absolutely reasonable, but I'm going to give you this. Find me another player who went from playing indoor soccer in St. Louis, Missouri, to playing in the Premier League the next season. And then after his stint in the Premier League, went back to playing indoor soccer. And then he wasn't done yet. He went back and played in the English second division. After all that, he came to Kansas City and was the most skilled player at the club and scored a ton of goals, so he's your guy. To the coast, to Carson, LA Galaxy. And this one, to me, is an easy pick. It's Landon Donovan. An argument can be made he's the best player in MLS history, but we'll get to that in another video. The leading goal scorer in the Galaxy's history and the second leading goal scorer all time in Major League Soccer. Signed with the Galaxy, won the MLS Cup his first year there, proceeded to win 3 more after that. I mean, come on, the MVP award of the entire league is named after him. He's your guy. To their rivals, LAFC, a team that is pretty young. It's hard to make a decision, but they have had one stud ever since they joined the league, and that's Carlos Vela. He's been the most consistent stud for LAFC ever since they joined Major League Soccer, helping them win a Supporters' Shield and eventually in 2022 winning an MLS Cup. Inter Miami, we're back at it again with another young team, but this one, an old player, Gonzalo Higuain. The leading scorer for a club that doesn't really have a lot of history, and he probably won't stand as the best player for a long time, but for as things stand, Gonzalo Higuain, the best player in Inter Miami history. With a little bit more history is Minnesota United, and they have a number 10 who has been a star in this league. Emmanuel Reynoso led them to an incredible run in 2020.
Well, that aged horribly. But the worst part is Reynoso still is the best player in Minnesota United history. This doesn't change anything. Like, here's why.
Emmanuel Reynoso led them to an incredible run in 2020 in the playoffs, where they should have played for an MLS Cup, except for they choked it to the Seattle Sounders late in the game. That year, he had 7 assists in 3 games in the playoffs. Absurd. And he's gotten incrementally better in his time at Minnesota. Any success that Minnesota United has had in their time in Major League Soccer has been through Reynoso. Club de Foot Montreal, as we used to call them, the Montreal Impact. I've got a name here for you true Major League Soccer fans, Ignacio Piatti. He leads the club in assists, 4th most appearances. He was fun to watch. And Montreal hasn't really been a successful club by any means, but Piatti was their success story. Keeping it with the young teams, Nashville SC, and they have the 2022 MVP of the entire league, Hani Mukhtar. 23 goals, 11 assists, and he started all but 2 games. I would love to say Walker Zimmerman with his success with the national team, and he would be a good shout, but Hani Mukhtar has become a star in this league. And now, as well as by the time he's done at Nashville, will go down as the best player in their history. Another inaugural team here, the New England Revolution, and for this one, I've got a couple of words. What are we doing?
What are we doing?
It's Taylor Twellman, and he may not be universally liked as a commentator. I don't know. There are some haters out there, but if you were a Revs fan, you could not hate this guy. The best of the best in MLS in the 2000s, 101 goals in 173 appearances. This guy scored more often than every other game. He's a top 10 MLS all-time goal scorer. The only thing that would hold him back is the fact that he played in 4 MLS Cups and didn't win any of them. You know, the Revs are the Buffalo Bills of Major League Soccer. They went to 3 straight MLS Cups in 05, 06, and 07, and they didn't win any of them. And it's sad that Taylor Twellman's career was cut short due to his injuries, but man, was he a baller. And for the New York Red Bulls, give me one man. BWP, Bradley Wright Phillips. We're talking about all-time leading goal scorers with Taylor Twellman. This man's got more than Twellman in 195 games. The definition of a clinical goal scorer. You find him anywhere in the box, he's probably going to finish it with 1 touch. An out-and-out goal scorer led this team to a lot of success. Well, regular season success, that is. NYCFC is up next, and I don't think any player deserves to be named the best player of a club when they play in a baseball stadium. But we're going to go with Alexander Collins. First, because he was massive for them in that MLS winning run in 2021, and he was clutch. He scored in crucial moments with a goal against Atlanta, as well as a couple of goals in their shootouts. Give it to him. The Lions of Orlando City, and their man is Kaká. This man helped put Orlando City on the map. He was a huge name coming into MLS, and he lived up to it. He carried a team that was really poor, and he brought them a lot of media attention. This helped turn the culture around in Orlando and turn it into a soccer city. Philadelphia Union have their trusted hands in Andre Blake, the most consistent performer year after year after year for the Union. A 3-time MLS Goalkeeper of the Year. That is outrageously good. The Union do not make the 2022 MLS Cup final without Andre Blake. He allowed less than a goal per game in 2020, 21, and 22. The Portland Timbers, they have a lot of good shouts, but the ones that really come to my mind are Diego and Diego. Diego Valeri is not going to win this one. It'll be Diego Chara. He has been the backbone of a Portland team that has had its ups and downs, but he was able to bring them an MLS Cup. No Portland team in his over 10 years there is anywhere near as good as they are without Diego Chara. He did everything you could ask him to do in the midfield. Such a physical player, one of the most annoying players to play against, so he can be forgotten in that midfield, but anyone who knows anything knows that this guy is the GOAT. For the Portland Timbers, that is. On to RSL, and this one had to be the hardest decision. You're talking between 2 guys that are the face of this club. When you think of RSL, I know you think of Kyle Beckerman and you think of Nick Rimando, but the reason it's Nick Rimando for me are his 3 saves in the shootout in 09 when they won MLS Cup. Beckerman is about as close of a second as you can get because those 2 were the guys when they were in their heyday, but for me, it goes to Nick Rimando. Now the San Jose Earthquakes, and do I even need to talk about this one? I might as well leave for this one. You know who it is. The leading goal scorer in Major League Soccer could go down one day as the greatest player to play in this league, but that's for another day. The Seattle Sounders, a team that saw massive success with this guy, and that's Nico Lodeiro. He joined in 2016 and brought them from being a solid club to being a contender. And that team that was a contender won MLS Cup. He was the newcomer of the year in 2016, and his production didn't stop. They made 3 more appearances in MLS Cup finals after 2016, winning another one of those. And he also scored 3 goals in the 2 legs of the CONCACAF Champions League final. Something that no other MLS team had ever done is win the CONCACAF Champions League final, and he did it, scored 3 goals. He's your guy. All right, I've got a hot take here. Ready? The best player in St. Louis City history is the friends up north. Toronto FC have had a lot more success than their counterparts in Canada. And a lot of that was thanks to Sebastian Giovinco. He made Toronto FC significantly better since the day he arrived. Their all-time leading goal scorer in just 4 seasons scored 83 goals. He was a Champions League level player before going to Toronto, and he showed it when he got there. Brought them to 2 straight MLS Cups where they lost in 2016 to the Sounders but got revenge in 2017. Another Canadian team, eh? The Vancouver Whitecaps. And their best player may be a little controversial here, but I'm gonna go with a player who didn't spend a lot of time there, but made them a international name, and that's Alphonso Davies. He may not be the best player in his time there, so I'm kind of breaking the rules, but he is one of the best players to ever come out of this league. He put the Whitecaps on the global map with his transfer. He was so electric in Major League Soccer and showed why he's had so much success in Europe. That's the GOAT at every club in MLS. I want to know if you've got any different ideas. Let me know down in the comments. Subscribe, and thank you for watching.